Now let us see how to solve a problem on YouTube manometers so that we can measure the pressure given a certain values. The right limb of a simple YouTube manometer containing mercury is open to the atmosphere, while the left limb is connected to a pipe in which a fluid of specific gravity 0.9 is flowing. The center of the pipe is 12 centimeters below the level of mercury in the right limb. Find the pressure of fluid in the pipe if the difference of mercury level in the two limbs is 20 centimeters. Converting the given data into the schematic view, we get this figure. This is the fluid which is having a specific gravity of 0.9, and this is the mercury, the red one, which is having the pressure, and since the pressure is more in this case, the fluid has come to this point. We take the reference datum as A. Now it is given that specific gravity of fluid is 0.9 and specific gravity of mercury S2 is 13.6, and difference of mercury level H2 is given as 20 centimeters, and it is also given that from the mercury level to this pipe it is given as 12 centimeters. But we are interested in finding out the distance between the datum line to the fluid level. So height of fluid from AA will be equal to H1 is equal to 20 centimeters minus 12 centimeters, which will give 8 centimeters here from these two distances. Let us say H is pressure head of fluid in terms of water head, then equating the two pressure heads above AA, we get H plus H1S1, which is the pressure head in the left limb, is equal to H2 into S2, which is equal to the pressure head in the right limb. Substituting the above values, we get H plus 0.08 into 0.9 is equal to 0.2 into 13.6, which gives us H is equal to 0.2 into 13.6 minus 0.08 into 0.9. Now we get the value as H is equal to 2.648 meters of water. Since we have all taken in meters of water, it is pressure head in terms of water. Now the pressure is given as P is equal to WH, where W is the specific weight of water. Substituting the value of specific weight of water in this above formula, we get P is equal to 9810 into 2.648, which gives you the answer as pressure P is equal to 25,976.88 Newton per meter square. Converting this into kilonewton per meter square, we get the value as 25.97688 kilonewton per meter square. Anyway, Newton per meter square is called as pascals, so we get the answer as pressure P is equal to 25.97688 kilopascals. Differential manometers are the devices which are used to find out the pressure difference between 2 points. They could be of two different types. Once the fluid level in the two pipes is same and the fluid are at different levels. This first one, it will consisting of a fluid which is having high specific gravity than the fluid which is flowing within the pipes. Naturally, mercury is used in this. If the two pipes are at same level, then we use this differential manometer. If the two pipes are at different levels, then we use this differential manometer. Here also, for measuring this, we take the distance y from the reference axis xx, or this we call it as datum line. From this datum line, we measure the distances, and using the formulas, we calculate the pressures. In the YouTube differential manometer, pressure head above xx in the left limb, which is where xx is the reference or datum line, is equal to H1 S1 plus HA, where HA is the pressure head in the pipe A. Pressure head above xx in the right limb is equal to H2 Sg plus H3 S2 plus Hb. Since the pressure at xx will be equal, we can equating the two pressure heads, we can write H1 S1 plus HA is equal to H2 Sg plus H3 S2 plus Hb. Since we want the difference of pressure heads between the two, we can write HA minus Hb is equal to H2 Sg plus H3 S2 minus H1 S1. inverted tube differential manometers are similar to differential manometers, but only the difference is the tube which connects the two pipes is inverted. The advantage of this inverted U-tube manometer is it can measure low pressure differences. The principle is same as that of differential manometers. So far we have learned how to measure pressure using different types of manometers, but this particular manometers requires a lot of calculations, but we want to know the pressure directly from an instrument so that we can take the reading as it is. The instrument which can give the direct reading is called a mechanical pressure gauge. Now we see one type of pressure gauge, that is Bourdon tube pressure gauge. This device consists of a metallic tube of elliptical cross section, one end of which is connected to a toothed sector and the other end is connected where we want to measure the pressure, and there is a pinion and gear setup, and this is connected to the pointer. This is already pre-calibrated dial gauge where we can measure the pressures directly. This elliptical cross section tube, this one is fixed to the point where we want to measure the pressure. Since the cross section of this tube is elliptical, when it is subjected to the fluid pressure, it tries to change its cross section from elliptical to circular. During this change of cross section from elliptical to circular, the length of this tube will change, which will be communicated to this toothed sector, and the magnified view will be shown by the movement of the dial. So we can measure directly the reading of pressure from the pointer, which is pre-calibrated. This dial gauge is pre-calibrated to the known pressures. When it is subjected to these pressures, this movement is communicated to this toothed sector. Thus this pointer moves from one point to the other point, so we can directly note down the reading. The dial gauge is marked either in Newton per meter square or in kg per centimeter square. A gauge which is used to measure positive as well as negative pressures is called a compound gauge. Here we are going to measure only the positive pressures. Dear students, so far we have learned about different properties of fluids and then different fluid pressures and fluid pressure measuring devices, and we have solved some problems on the properties of fluids and then how to measure pressure of a particular manometer, and then we have seen different types of manometers, and then we have learned about one of the mechanical pressure measuring devices. Now you are in a position to define different types of properties of fluids, and then you can calculate the pressure given a problem. Hope you have enjoyed this lesson. Until we meet again, goodbye. Dear students, today we will learn about hydraulic turbines under the heading hydraulic machines. You know, hydraulic energy has got different forms like pressure energy, kinetic energy, and the potential energy of water. The hydraulic machines are the machines which convert the hydraulic energy into mechanical energy, or the mechanical energy is converted to hydraulic energy. The machines which convert hydraulic energy into mechanical energy are called hydraulic turbines, or we say, as we know that water is being familiarly used, so we call it as water turbines. The machines which use the mechanical energy and convert it to hydraulic energy are called the pumps. In this class today we learn about hydraulic turbines. Utilizing the energy, hydraulic energy, man started thinking of hydraulic energy some 2000 years back. In those days, water wheels made up of wood were used to convert the hydraulic energy into mechanical energy. This is one type of water wheel which was used in the earlier days. This is overshot wheel which used the potential energy of water. Water which is kept at a higher level is forced to fall onto this water wheel. Due to this potential energy, it forces the blades of the water wheel. Thus the water wheel rotates, and thus the potential energy of the water is converted to kinetic energy. This is another type of water wheel which uses the kinetic energy of water. This is the water wheel which consists a number of blades around the periphery, and this is kept across the fluid flow. Due to this kinetic energy, it forces the blades so that it will have the rotation in this direction. Thus it gets the kinetic energy of the fluid is converted to mechanical energy or the rotation of the wheel. Gradually, from the different water wheels, man started thinking of different types of turbines, and a number of turbines were developed which we will discuss later. In the turbines, the hydraulic energy is converted to mechanical energy. The mechanical energy is in the form of rotation of shaft. This shaft or this mechanical energy or this rotating shaft is connected to a generator which in turn produces the electricity. So from the hydraulic energy to this electrical energy, there is a schematic flow of water from the level water to the turbine or to the generator. Now we discuss about the general layout of a hydroelectric power station. The main elements of hydroelectric power plant are reservoir, penstock, forebay if the powerhouse is away from the reservoir, surge tank, turbine house, and then tail race. The essential requirement of a hydroelectric power plant is the availability of continuous source of water. Natural source like lake or reservoir at a higher elevation is used, or an artificial reservoir may be formed by constructing a dam across the river. This is the river which is flowing. Here we construct a dam so that the pressure energy of the fluid is increased. The water surface in the storage reservoir is known as head race level, or simply we call this as head race. This is almost we can say that this is the grass head which is available at the inlet of the pipe. This high pressure energy water is carried to the turbine through a long pipes which we call it as penstock. Penstocks are the large diameter pipes made up of steel or reinforced concrete, and they will carry the water from the bottom of the dam where the pressure of the fluid is very high. It will carry the water from the dam to the turbine. If the powerhouse is situated away from the main storage reservoir, then a temporary storage reservoir called forebay, which is not being shown in this figure, is constructed at the head of the penstock. When the powerhouse is located across a canal, a forebay may be provided by enlarging the canal just ahead of the powerhouse. A surge tank also may be provided just on the upstream of powerhouse to control the pressure variation due to the sudden opening or closing of the valves. Suppose we open this valve suddenly, the water enters suddenly into this pipe, so that partial vacuum will be created within this pipe. To avoid that, we provide this surge tank so as some amount of water will be stored in this surge tank, so that without any creation of vacuum, the waters from the surge tank also enters into the pipe. Similarly, if we close this valve suddenly, the pressure in this pipe suddenly builds up. So there is a chance that the penstock may fail. In order to avoid this, we provide this surge tank which will take the water due to the sudden closure of this valve. Now the water is carried from the dam or from this reservoir via this penstock to the valve, and by opening of the valve, this valve is used to control the flow of fluid, and this fluid is sent to the turbine. Here we have shown an impulse turbine. Sometimes a reaction turbine also may be used. From this, the high pressure energy water enters onto the turbine. Since this is an impulse turbine, all the pressure energy is converted to kinetic energy before entering the turbine. This high kinetic energy water pushes these blades of the runner or turbine blades, so that the blade moves like this and the next blade occupies the place. Due to this force, it will move so that the runner rotates. Thus, the pressure energy of the fluid which is available here will be converted to kinetic energy of the runner, and after entering the turbine, it will be sent to a channel called tail race. This is the level where the exit or the water that is sent from the turbine, it will be sent to the tail race. The level of the tail race from the datum line is called tail race head, or simply we call it as tail race. Here the head is the gross head that is available here. When it comes from this point to this point, there exists certain amount of loss of head, which we call it as HF, which you have already learned in the flow through pipes. Here this is the frictional loss, and the net head that is available is given like this. This is the net head which is available to the turbine. So far we have seen the general layout of a hydroelectric power plant. In the hydroelectric power plant, the hydraulic turbine is the important element. Now we see how to classify, or what are the ways of classification of turbines. According to the type of energy at inlet, it can be classified as impulse turbine and reaction turbine. In the impulse turbine, all the pressure energy of the fluid is converted to kinetic energy before entering into the turbine. In the case of reaction turbine, the pressure energy is gradually converted to kinetic energy in the turbine. That means that the pressure energy will be converted in the turbine itself, not before entering the turbine. The second way of classification of turbines is, it is according to the direction of flow through the runner. First one is tangential flow turbine, in which water flows tangentially to the turbine runner. Second one is radial flow turbine, where water flows along radial direction to the runner. The next type is axial flow turbine, in which water flows along the direction parallel to the axis of the runner. The last one is mixed flow turbine, in which water enters the runner radially and leaves it axially. The third method of classification of turbines is according to the head at the inlet to the turbine, high head turbines. If the head is more than 250 meters, then we call that turbines as high head turbines. If the head is in between 60 meters to 250 meters, then we call that as medium head turbines. And if the head is less than 60 meters, then we call that turbines as low head turbines. The example for high head turbines can be Pelton wheel, and for medium head turbines can be Francis turbine, and low head turbines it is Kaplan turbine. And the last type of classification of turbines is according to the specific speed of the turbine. Now let us first define what is a specific speed. Specific speed of a turbine is the speed of geometrically similar turbine that would develop 1 kilowatt power when working under a head of 1 meter. Based on the specific speed, the turbines can be classified into 3 different categories. One is low specific speed turbine. The specific speed of this particular turbines ranges from 8.5 to 43. Generally, Pelton wheel comes under this category. The second type is medium specific speed turbine, whose specific speed is 50 to 340, and Francis turbine comes under this category. The last one is high specific speed turbine, whose specific speed is from 255 to 860. Kaplan turbine comes under this category. Now we will learn about Pelton wheel, which comes under the heading of impulse turbine, and it is also a high head turbine and low specific speed turbine. Now we see the construction details of the Pelton wheel. This is a view of Pelton wheel, in which this is the runner, on which there are a number of blades mounted on this. The runner consists of a circular disc with a number of buckets evenly spaced around the circumference of this runner. The shape of this runner blade is double semi ellipsoidal. A cut section view of this is shown here. The shape of the buckets is double semi ellipsoidal. Each bucket is divided into two symmetrical parts by a sharp edged ridge known as splitter. The pressure energy of the water is converted into kinetic energy in the nozzle here. Water enters from the penstock, it comes onto this, and here all the pressure energy, this is the nozzle. Here, since the shape of the nozzle is gradually decreasing, so the pressure energy will be converted to kinetic energy, and the water with high pressure energy will be hitting the blades here. This splitter divides the jet into two equal portions, and then the water flows round the smooth inner surface of the bucket and leaves at its outer edge. The buckets are so shaped that the sectional view of this is shown here. The buckets are so shaped that it deflects through an angle of 165 degrees. As you have already learned that if the water jet deflects 180 degrees, we can have maximum impact of force, which you have already learned in the previous chapter, that is impact of jets. So that if we can create this as nearer to 180 degrees, so that we can get more amount of force will be there and more efficiency will be there. So we keep this angle as 160 degrees, or we keep the angle of blade as 15 degrees. This double cup shape will neutralize the axial thrust which is being created here and here. Thus these two axial thrusts balanced, and there will not be any axial thrust on this. That is why the advantage of this double cup shape is to avoid any axial thrust that is present on these blades. The back of the buckets is so shaped that as it swings downward into the jet, no water is wasted by splashing. At the lower tip of the bucket, a notch is cut to prevent the bucket from intercepting the jet when the preceding bucket is under action. It also avoids the deflection of water towards the center of the wheel as the bucket first meets the jet. To control the quantity of water which is coming from the penstock into the nozzle, a spear and a spear rod is used. By moving the spear rod forward and backward, we can control the quantity of fluid that is flowing onto the turbine. By moving the spear rod or the spear towards right, we can reduce the quantity of fluid that is hitting the bucket. By moving the spear backwards, or we can say leftwards, the quantity of fluid that is entering the buckets will be increased. A casing is provided to prevent the splashing of water and to lead the water to the tail race, which has not been shown in the figure. Here another purpose of casing is to prevent any accidents. In this particular turbine, in this Pelton wheel, there is no hydraulic function of this casing. It is only to reduce the splashing of water. Now the water from the penstock enters into the turbine via this nozzle, and all the pressure energy of the water is converted to kinetic energy, and the water with very high velocity or with very high kinetic energy will hit the buckets, and due to this force there will be change in momentum, and thus the bucket moves. Once the bucket moves, the next immediately succeeding bucket will occupy its place. Thus this kinetic energy will create some force on these buckets, and thus the runner rotates in a circular direction. This is how the pressure energy is converted to kinetic energy, and using this kinetic energy the turbine rotates. The shaft which is connected to this runner will be coupled to the generator. Thus the electricity will be produced. Now we draw the velocity triangles to the blade. Since the water enters directly onto the splitter, the inlet velocity triangle is drawn like this. Here u1 is the velocity of blade, v1 is the absolute velocity of water. Since both are in the same direction, the relative velocity will be the difference of these two, v1 and u1. we can say the velocity of whirl Vw1 is equal to V1, which is shown as AC. Here AB is the velocity of blade and BC is the relative velocity of water at inlet, and V1 is absolute velocity of water hitting the blade. Vw1 is velocity of whirl at inlet. For this, velocity of flow will not be there as it is a straight line. Now if we draw the outlet velocity triangle, this is the velocity of blade u2, which is equal to u1, and since the velocity, this has to come outwards with a velocity Vr2, but while it comes out the blade moves certain distance, so the absolute velocity of the jet will become V2, and phi is the angle between u2 and Vr2, and beta is the angle between V2 and Vw2. Vf2 is velocity of flow at outlet, Vw2 is velocity of whirl at outlet. This phi is called blade angle at outlet. Similarly, this we call it as angle of deflection. So far we have seen the working and the constructional details of Pelton wheel. Now we derive some expressions for work done and efficiency of Pelton wheel. We have already drawn the velocity triangles at inlet and outlet. Now we derive the expressions for the work done and efficiency of Pelton wheel. Let H is equal to net head acting on the Pelton wheel, whose value is equal to Hg minus Hf, where Hg is the grass head available at the dam and Hf is friction loss, that is Hf is given as 4 FLV square by 2ZD. N is equal to speed of wheel in RPM, D is diameter of wheel, and small d is diameter of the jet, and V1 is equal to velocity of jet at inlet, whose value is given by square root of 2gh. Now the velocity of bucket u is given as, which is equal to u1 and u2. u1 means the velocity of bucket at inlet and u2 is the velocity of bucket at outlet. Since the diameter of runner is same, so the value will be same, and whose value is equal to pi dn by 60. The velocity triangle at inlet will be a straight line. So Vr1 is equal to V1 minus U1, which is equal to V1 minus U, where Vr1 is the relative velocity at inlet and Vw1 is equal to V1. Vw1 is the velocity of whirl at inlet and V1 is the absolute velocity of jet. From the outlet velocity triangle, we see that since there is no friction, Vr2 is equal to Vr1, which means that the relative velocity at outlet is equal to the relative velocity at inlet, and the velocity of whirl is given as Vr2 cos phi minus u2. Now to calculate the force exerted by the jet of water in the direction of motion, we have force is equal to mass into change in velocity. So from this we get the equation as Fx is equal to rho a v1 into Vw1 plus Vw2, where rho a v1 is the mass of the fluid, where A is the area of jet, which is given by pi d square by 4. Work done by the jet on the runner per second is given by force into distance travelled per unit time. Since the distance travelled per unit time is u, therefore we get work done is equal to rho a v1 into Vw1 plus Vw2 into u. Now to calculate work done per unit weight of water striking, we have to divide this work done with weight of water. To find the weight of water, the weight of water is given as rho a v1 into z. So substituting the values, we get rho a v1 into Vw1 plus Vw2 into u divided by rho a V1 into Z. So cancelling the values rho a V1 and rho a V1, we get VW1 plus VW2 into U divided by G. To calculate work done per unit mass of water striking, we get the formula as VW1 plus VW2 into U. The energy supplied to the jet at inlet is in the form of kinetic energy, which is equal to half mv square, and we know the mass is equal to rho a V1. So substituting the values, we get the energy supplied to the inlet jet at inlet is equal to half rho a V1 into V1 square. Now to calculate the hydraulic efficiency, efficiency is defined as output by input. Here the output is work done and the input is kinetic energy that we are supplying to it. So the formula now becomes hydraulic efficiency is equal to work done per second divided by kinetic energy of jet per second. Substituting the above values, we get rho a V1 into VW1 plus VW2 into U divided by half rho a V1 into V1 square. So cancelling the values, we get 2 into VW1 plus VW2 into U divided by V1 square. Similarly, it can also be proved that the maximum hydraulic efficiency occurs when the velocity of wheel is half the velocity of jet of water at inlet, that is U is equal to V1 by 2. Substituting this value, we get the maximum hydraulic efficiency as maximum hydraulic efficiency is equal to 1 plus cos phi divided by 2, where phi is the blade angle at inlet. There are some points to be remembered for Pelton wheel. The first point is the velocity of jet at inlet V1 is given as V1 is equal to CV square root of 2GH, where CV is the coefficient of velocity whose value lies between 0.98 to 0.99. The second point is the velocity of wheel U is given as phi root 2GH, where phi is called as speed ratio and its value varies from 0.43 to 0.48. The angle of deflection of jet through the buckets is taken as 165 degrees if no angle of deflection is given. That means that the blade is set at an angle of 15 degrees. The mean diameter or the pitch diameter D of the Pelton wheel can be found out using the formula D is equal to 60 U divided by N. And we have another point, that is jet ratio M. It is the ratio of pitch diameter D of the Pelton wheel to the diameter of jet. Writing it mathematically, M is equal to D by D, whose value is generally taken as 12. To calculate the number of buckets on a runner, it is given as Z is equal to 15 plus D by 2D. We can also calculate the number of jets by dividing the total rate of flow through the turbine by the rate of flow of water through a single jet.